Ted, there's some real hidden gems in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
What, you mean like a real gem?
No, Ted, not a gem, but real treasure that makes running the game so much easier.
Oh, you mean all like the great tips for creating your own worlds and NPCs?
No, that's not it.
Oh, you mean all of the random loot tables that make, running your encounters that much better?
Ted, let me share with you the greatness that's in the DMG for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
You know, Nerdarchy has its own hidden gems, and if you don't want to miss any of our great YouTube videos, you need to subscribe to the channel.
And if you don't want to randomly know if we've got a new video or not, you got to make sure you click that notification bell so you'll know for sure.
Before we get started, we want to thank our sponsor, a great resource that you can pull up all the stuff we're going to talk about, and that is D&D Beyond. There's tons of free information over there, from the SRD to the videos by Todd Kenrick, awesome articles, but there's so much more.
We use this, frequently, whether we're creating campaigns, whether we're creating characters, or, even researching stuff for these videos. We find D&D Beyond an amazing tool. It's so helpful in so many different ways. You gotta check it out. Do yourself and your game a favor by looking at D&D Beyond.
Link in the description. All right, Ted, let's talk about the if you've read one DMG, you've read them all trap.
So if you're saying that if I've learned how to game master, I should still already be, reading all of the books?
Well, I feel like what'll happen a lot of times as you play through various editions, you play a bunch of different role-playing games, you're like, I know how to dungeon master. I don't really need a lot of this information anymore. And maybe you go there for the treasure or the magic items or something of that nature, but you overlook all this plethora of useful information and things that you can draw inspiration from, can make your game better if you get stuck, or maybe you just need some random tables. They're in there.
Every time we decide that we're going to do a video on this and we begin our research, it baffles me at how much amazing stuff is in this book. And, we decided, okay, well, we're going to do this video. And so many times, like when I talked about, when we did the video on, the random NPC or the random villain creation process, it was amazing. But, that's not all. We looked at page 292, Stocking Your Dungeon, to 301. There's a lot of great stuff in just that 9 pages of content.
Right. So that's the back end, actually, of Appendix A in the DMG. Matter of fact, I used one of these tables this past week when I ran a game for my family. I run a game for my son, my wife, our nephew, and one of my son's friends. And I put a puzzle in, and I wanted something weird or bad to happen every time they failed to get the puzzle right. So I'm like, I need a random table. What am I going to do? I'm like, oh, there's that tricks table in the back of the DMG. So I actually used that. They didn't get the puzzle right the first time. They randomly rolled, and they got a monster appears out of the object. So in this case, I randomly rolled a monster, and it was a Manicore, and they were terrified, and then they decimated it. But for an instant, they were very scared.
And that is one of the great things about, gaming with essentially new players, is they don't know all of the, monsters by heart. They don't know what the challenge rating system, really deals with yet. So if you just describe it well and what it's doing, it can be a little off-putting. The tricks table, it's a die 100, and it looks...
Well, before we even get into that, there's a bunch of other stuff, too, that we can get to, and then we'll pull that up.
Well, yeah.
So Appendix A, what is this section good for?
So this is going to be when you're looking at your dungeon and whether you're trying to prep it and, you're doing your work before the session is going, and you need to know, what do I want to build? And you can put all of these pieces together. Or if your players go in a random direction that you weren't ready for and you need to just pick a dungeon out real quick, you can go to this section, roll randomly, and now you've got a dungeon that's stocked and ready to go, just like the name says, stocking the dungeon, that you didn't have to prepare.
Or sometimes you might just get stuck for an idea. Maybe you're in a rut. So you can go to this section and just start randomly rolling things or looking at the charts and pick what you like and, pick and choose. And it might just be, what you needed to get your creative juices going.
as a random roll chart, it can be used as that. But as Dave says, it can absolutely be used for inspiration. I love doing that because sometimes I'm like, well, I want this ability right here, and I'm putting that in my dungeon. Other times I'm like, oh, well, that gives me inspiration to create my own thing, and you make something that's similar, but not exactly with what's in the book.
I remember being a kid and just getting started in this hobby. And I used to love opening up to the back of the DMG and using these random tables and building dungeons I was never going to use. You could almost randomly do a choose your own path and play by yourself with these tables. So there's a lot of great uses. So let's kind of like start diving into the nitty gritty. What is the first section?
So stocking a dungeon, you've got the chamber purpose. And this is basically, what is this room or this dungeon for? Is it a trap, a lair, a maze, a mine, a planar gate, a stronghold, a temple or shrine, a tomb, a treasure vault, general dungeon chambers? So you've got all of these different options. And if you don't know what kind of thing you want to make first, you've got that. And then within each of those sections, you've got another random roll that you can make to further detail. Oh, it's a temple or shrine with cells where the faithful can sit in quiet contemplation, or a stronghold, which is a library with extensive collection of rare books. Each of those things is vastly different.
After your dungeon type, which there's 10 of them, so you could just roll a die 10 and let the dice decide if you don't even want to think about it. Next up is
the current chamber state. Lets you know whether it's anywhere from pristine and original state all the way down to it's rubble and the ceiling is partially collapsed. So after the current state, we have what's inside. So you've got monsters and motivation. You have got your hazards, which is going to fall into obstacles, traps, and as the previously mentioned, tricks. And then you get into, your dungeon dressing, which, these in and of themselves, wind up creating some pretty fun things, whether you're hearing chirping, clanging, footsteps from behind you, no matter where you go. I love the noises table, and I definitely want to have some more fun with those.
Sometimes, too, like for dungeon dressings, you just don't know what to put in a room. So, like, you just open up to this section, roll some dice, or just pick some things and go, oh, just for some background things. But beware, anytime you put anything in a room, the players are going to think it means something. Like, what does this stone chamber pot really mean? What is the DM doing here? Is there something hidden in there?
But, that is to say that if your players fixate on something, that's not to say that just because you didn't prepare it ahead of time as being something that's interesting, if a player's fixate on it, go ahead and on the spot, make it be something. Figure it out later if you have to, but be like, all right, this player is really obsessed with this candle because I described it well. You know what? That candle's gonna be something. It might not be a magic item, but maybe it's a ritual component. Maybe it's something that's really special that could lead to another quest later on. It's really great. You've got a couple pages full of, random things to fill a room, furnishings, utensils and personal items, container contents, book scrolls and tomes.
The hazards and trap section is really nice. A lot of times you don't know what to do for a trap, and basically you can roll, get the severity, and then the specific type of trap that's in there. You can go back into earlier sections of the DMG and see what that severity is actually going to mean. And you can just use this to populate your dungeons. And if you're in a rut, I just feel like it's a great place to go.
Whether you're at the table and you need something quick, or whether you're, it's not game time and you're prepping for a session, they are just great. And like I said in the beginning, every time I pull out this book and we go to a new section to talk about for a video, it just marvels me. That's like, oh, I should be using this more often. And, I've got years and years worth of experience behind the GM screen, but yet there's so much here that makes me a better GM.
Well, it was written by professional game designers after all, Ted.
Indeed.
Hey, but if you're looking for things to stock your dungeons with, we got some great ideas for you over on our Patreon.
We create products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons every month. Our patrons get access to our weekly live hangouts, automatically get entered into our monthly giveaways, and more.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.